After the long wait, it is finally here. Our first game action of the 2025 season as the Seahawks take on a few familiar faces and the Las Vegas Raiders at Lumen Field. Which players should you be keeping the closest eye on in Thursday's exhibition opener? We're going to be taking a deep dive here on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s out there. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. Whether you're nearby Bend, Oregon, or listening from Duluth, Minnesota, a special thanks to all of our valued 12s that tune into the podcast. We've got preseason football coming up tomorrow night, the first exhibition contest of the 2025 season. The Seahawks hosting Pete Carroll, Geno Smith, and the Las Vegas Raiders at Lumen Field. We're going to be diving into the players and maybe a little bit of a sprinkle of matchups here and there, but mostly individual players that you need to be watching going into this game at Lumen Field. And we'll talk about what constitutes a successful first preseason game for the Seahawks. It may not necessarily be the win-loss column for a game that doesn't truly matter in the standings, but we'll be looking at what would be a successful first preseason game for the Seahawks. All that coming your way courtesy of our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Now for your lead story here on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. We've got this big preseason opener coming up tomorrow night at Lumen Field. Rob, our first chance to see the Seahawks facing off against another team, the Las Vegas Raiders, coming to town. And Mike Macdonald's already made it clear that starters, for the most part, are not going to be playing. We will see some position battles that are still being waged that are going to lead some veterans playing. We're going to see the rookies all getting their first action. Let's look at the players to watch going into this game because, look, we'd love to dive deep into matchups, but it's not like we're going to see Max Crosby going up against Abraham Lucas or Charles Cross. We're not going to be seeing the players play that are normally going to be playing for the Seahawks on Sundays, at least most of them. We're going to see some rookies that are going to be impact players for the Seahawks. But for the most part, this is going to be about the reserves battling for roster spots, battling for practice squad positioning. So without further ado, let's talk on the offensive side of the football first, because that feels like that's where the most drama is at going into this preseason in terms of roster spots. There's some starting positions still potentially up for grabs. So who are the guys that you are watching most closely in this preseason game, Rob, against the Raiders? Who should fans be watching the most closely in this contest?
Well, I think you have to start the conversation off with the first-round pick for the Seahawks and Gray Zabel. Look, this is an offensive line that has struggled. Let's just putting it mildly. Seattle, of course, addressed that in free agency slightly, and then very much in the draft itself. So Gray Zabel. Now, look, as you said, there's not going to be a Max Crosby likely on the field, and he wouldn't be going up against Gray Zabel anyways. Christian Wilkins, of course, was a star defensive tackle for the Raiders previously. He is not going to be on the field because the Raiders already released him. At the same time, the Raiders do have some talent along the defensive line. I've talked before about how much I really like Leki Fotu's game. The fact that he is now a member of the Las Vegas Raiders, I think that is going to be somebody who might be able to give Seattle a little bit of trouble. Adam Butler, the Raiders just traded for Thomas Booker IV from Philadelphia. Two rookies that they drafted that we talked about an awful lot previous to the draft, Corbin and J.J. Pegues and Tonka Hemingway. The Raiders have some young defensive tackle talent here that I think it's going to be a challenge for Gray Zabel. So my eyes are going to be on number 76, the Seahawks first-round draft pick. I want to see Seattle reestablish the line of scrimmage and be the team that is able to run the football when they want and also be able to pass protect from the interior.
Yeah, I think everybody's got to be looking at Gray Zabel. And look, everybody's going to want me to say, well, what other offensive linemen are you going to bring up here? But for me, I've got to shift the focus to the receiver room real quick because you want to see Gray Zabel. I want to see Torrey Horton. I want to see if he can take what he's done the last week on the practice field where he has been lighting it up, getting a lot of reps of the ones. He's going to play some in this game, but I'm almost wondering if he's a guy, especially because he just now got healthy coming off the injury that he had last year. I'm wondering if he's a player the Seahawks say, okay, we're going to give him a series or two at the beginning, hope that he gets a catch or two. Okay, we're happy. We've seen enough. I don't know that he's necessarily going to be a guy that they're going to be throwing out there for most of the first half and trying to get him a ton of reps just because of what they've seen. But regardless of how long he's out there, I want to see that silky smooth route running. I want to see the soft hands, the ability to create downfield and after the catch. I just want to see a little bit of a flash of that against another team and then get him up the field healthy. That's really the key for me. But I'm really excited to see number 15 in this game. And then the offensive line obviously is incredibly important, but I really do want to see the playmakers that are going to get a chance to play in this game too, because a lot of them are not going to be playing in the actual game. Torrey Horton is one that on Sundays in the regular season could be making those plays for the Seahawks, and you want to kind of get that first glimpse in game action.
Oh, no question about it. And if you had not mentioned Torrey Horton, and then I would be talking about him next, just because I do think that this is an incredible opportunity for him. Because similar to the Raiders' defensive line, where I think that frankly, it's a group that has some talent, but at the same time, it's not necessarily a team strength. There's been an awful lot of turnover in the Raiders' secondary, and so I do think that it is a position that Seattle should be able to create some big plays. I'm going to stick with the offensive line for a moment here and just go with Anthony Bradford. As we talked about, the talent is obvious with Bradford. It's the up and down inconsistencies of his game that has really been maddening over the past 3 seasons. Of course, he is, entering the final year of his rookie contract, as we've talked about. He is the favorite at this point to be the starter at the right guard position. I think that Seattle is going to run him out there and expect him to play at a very high level, and not just for a series or two, perhaps for more than that, to make sure that he is able to play consistently well, not just have one series where maybe he pops a little bit, have him out there for multiple series. And so again, for the same reasons that I'm excited to see what Gray Zabel is able to do, I'm excited to see what Anthony Bradford is able to do. I'd like to see him basically just take over the right guard position and leave this as a moot position, that it no longer is a competition, that this is Anthony Bradford's job. And as Mike Macdonald himself said, Anthony Bradford needs to seize control of his career. This is his first opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and as far as the offensive line goes, easily could say Christian Haynes here too. I don't know that he's in that competition now at this point. Getting moved over to left guard, I don't even know if he's in this competition anymore. This might just be him battling for a roster spot. And so I want to talk about a guy that I think is on the team, but he can further enhance his status as a swing tackle, that being Mike Jarrell, staying on the line of scrimmage. Mike Jarrell just looks like a different dude in their practices. You could tell he's had a full NFL offseason. He's stronger. He looks a lot more confident with his technique. He's done a nice job picking up blitzes. He's held up well in one-on-ones, and he's been playing left tackle a lot. So that's been a big change for him. Now you get to go against another team, though, playing that left tackle position. So to me, this is kind of that stepping stone for him. And the last guy I'm going to mention here, it'd be easy for me to say Damian Martinez, but I think with the fact Ken Walker III and Zach Charbonnet are going to be in bubble wrap already in this game, I don't know that Damian Martinez and George Holani play that much. I think that you'll maybe see those guys for a couple series. I think the Seahawks want to keep those guys, especially with the injury they had to why am I going blank on this? Kenny McIntosh. When they had the injury to Kenny McIntosh, they did not want to risk another guy that was high on that depth chart getting hurt. So I don't know that we're going to see a lot of Damian Martinez and George Holani. The guy I do expect to see a lot, though, Jacardia Wright, the undrafted rookie out of Missouri State, 220 pounds. He's a physical, contact-seeking back. I could see Jacardia Wright being this year's Troy Pope, a guy that gets a lot of running time and gets some big chunk plays, blows up some guys with some truck sticks, and the fans get on his side. That doesn't mean he's making this roster, but he can get himself onto the practice squad as that insurance policy at running back. I expect he's going to get a lot of carries in this football game. So this is a really good first chance to see what Jacardi Wright is bringing in the backfield.
Yeah, I like the fact that not only did you mention Wright, but you mentioned him later in this opening segment here. Because look, Torrey Horton, who you let off, of course, with, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he starts. I don't expect the last guy I'm going to mention, Jalen Milroe, to start. And that's why I'm saving him till the end. But let's be honest. I mean, he is the guy that I am most excited to see, just because I've said this before, and I 100% believe it, Corbin, that Jalen Milroe is the most athletic quarterback in Seattle Seahawks team history. That's 50 years, as we all know. This is the 50th year for the Seahawks. And so, yeah, I'm as excited as anybody could possibly be about what Milroe might be able to offer the Seahawks. I know that Mike Macdonald has already said that he's not going to play as starter still. I think there's a possibility that Sam Darnold is out there. You know what you have in the veteran Drew Lock. Milroe, I think, is going to play the most of this game. Maybe it's the second half that he starts at that point. So I think the Seahawks fans are going to have to kind of, just wait and be patient to see what he can do. But his athletic ability, his arm talent as well, is he as accurate in the game setting as he has flashed in practices so far after struggling a little bit with accuracy over his college career? To me, he is the most exciting player on the Seahawks roster at this point in terms of a preseason matchup. But again, I think you have to exercise a little bit of patience, because I'm not expecting him to get as much playing time as perhaps a Jacardi Wright or some of the other backs that you mentioned a moment ago.
When we come back, look, we've just talked to offense. We've got defensive players under the microscope that we're going to be diving into heading into this preseason opener against the Raiders. We'll get to that coming up next here on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat and get your draft board ready. Buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, all the overreactions we live for. It's going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, Rob and I are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran, making your millionth league. I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years and love how smooth the draft day experience is. Our Locked On League's been running through Yahoo for a while now. It's easy setup, great mobile app. The smack talk just hits different in the message boards. The team names, that's fun regardless of where you play, especially when you're rubbing it in Rob's face after you beat him. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. Opening the festivities, Yahoo Fantasy just dropped Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season right around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, of course, you can play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Welcome back to the Monday or Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. Some of you may wonder why I can't remember my days. When there's a preseason game on Thursday, it always throws me for a loop what day of the week that I'm at. But anyway, I digress. A special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. We've got the preseason opener on tap tomorrow night. Seattle Seahawks, Las Vegas Raiders, Lumen Field. First time that fans will get to see this year's squad at home. Yes, they had Football Fest, but this is going to be the first actual game setting that fans will get to see the Seahawks in action. We just talked about the offensive players that we are going to be watching most closely. Let's shift gears now to the defense. And it feels like it's a little different dynamic, because with the offense, you have some starting jobs that are up for grabs. You have a lot of rookies coming in that have a chance to play immediate snaps. Defense, to a lesser extent with the rookies, there's a few guys that have a chance, but this really feels like this is going to be all about the depth shaking out, because there aren't battles for starting jobs. It's really about figuring out who's going to make this roster. So from that sense, there's a lot on the line from a 53-man perspective with this defense.
Oh, no question about it. That's why I'm going to start the conversation here with Drake Thomas. Look, as we talked about, the Seahawks are likely to have some players in bubble wraps. I think that it would make some sense given the off-field, complications, unfortunately, that have Ernest Jones, just kind of dealing with a heavy heart right now. As it has been reported, he is dealing with the passing of his father, and much respect, and just sorrow sent his way. And Tyrese Knight has been dealing with a minor injury as well. So I think that Drake Thomas, a linebacker from NC State, who was a little bit stumpy, he doesn't have the great size, doesn't have great straight line speed, but damn it, he is a really instinctive linebacker. I've used the comparison to the Seahawks legend Lofa Tatupu in the past. I don't know that Lofa would love that comparison, but at the same time, that's what I see as a player who can kind of close his eyes, has those Jedi-like instincts to be able to locate the football. And you know that Pete Carroll, as head coach, Chip Kelly, as offensive coordinator, they are going to be running the football a lot. They may not have their prize rookie Ashton Genty on the field that much, but regardless of who they have at the running back position, they are going to be, running the football right down Seattle's throat often. And so I do think that Drake Thomas is going to have an opportunity here to splash. And so I want to see him. It's kind of the opposite we talked about before, where, again, Seattle's going to have some guys in bubble wrap. I want to see Drake Thomas play a lot. I want to make sure that he can stay durable. I want to make sure that he can make tackles, not only in the box, but in the perimeter as well. And I want to see him in coverage as well. I'm very confident in Drake Thomas. I think that he is a underrated player when it comes to Seattle's future. And I want to make sure that he is able to do so at a high level immediately.
And I'm going to stay at the linebacker spot with a guy that is at a much different stage in his career. Drake Thomas has always been an off-ball linebacker. He was an absolute star at North Carolina State. He has been at that position since college, since high school. Then you have Jamie Sheriff, who was the defensive star of Seattle's preseason last year, coming out of nowhere. He went from being a beer delivery truck driver to leading the league in sacks and quarterback hits in the preseason. He was outstanding for the Seahawks to the point that the Panthers actually claimed him off waivers when Seattle released him. Winds up back with the Seahawks practice squad, and then Mike Macdonald, the mad scientist that he is, just decides, you know what? I think you can play off-ball linebacker, so we're going to move you there. And Mike Macdonald loves hybrids. He likes guys that can do multiple things. Jamie Sheriff looked out of place the first week or so of training camp. There were a number of plays where it's like you can tell that number 50 has not played this position. But Monday, he had a couple really nice plays where he diagnosed the run quickly, got downhill, and blasted running backs. So you're starting to see the game slow down for him at this new position, and he can still rush off the edge. They're still using him there some, but I want to see what Jamie Sheriff looks like getting a lot of reps playing that off-ball linebacker position against a Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly-led team that's going to run the football. You're going to be tested. Your metal's going to be tested as a run defender. I just want to see what he looks like in a full game setting going against another team at that position. And going to the D-line, the second guy that I'm going to mention here, Jared Ivey's been a popular player of discussion for me since the Seahawks signed him as an undrafted free agent out of Ole Miss. You just don't see first-team All-SEC players typically go undrafted, but that is what happened with Jared Ivey because he didn't test well. But he's been a little bit of an enigma here in the first 2 weeks of camp because on one hand, you're getting the splashy plays. Like he's made several stops in the backfield. He's gotten his big paws up and knocked balls down in passing lanes, which that's an area the Seahawks could use help anywhere they can get it. That's been a struggle for them the last few years. But he's also made contact with quarterbacks a couple times when he wasn't supposed to. He's gotten guys to the ground and then tried to pick him up like, I didn't tackle him. He's kind of got that agitator to him, which I like that. I like that kind of a guy, but he's gotten into it with Bradford a couple times in one-on-ones. Like he's chippy. And I think a guy like that tends to be a real problem in the preseason with his physicality, his heavy hands. I think Raiders offensive linemen are not going to like having to deal with number 51. So this could be that stepping stone for him because I don't know if he's on the roster right now, but if he can go out and make plays in the preseason in a true football setting where you say, hey, Jared, you can tackle them now, I think he is going to put up some really nice numbers and give himself a real good shot to make this football team.
Yeah, no question about it. I'm excited about the undrafted free agent as well. I'll actually switch over to an undrafted free agent. I was going to mention him last, but as you said, Mike Macdonald loves players who are versatile. And Connor O'Toole is a guy that when he first started out at the University of Utah, he was a wide receiver. And they moved him to defensive end. And, similar to, as I mentioned before with Drake Thomas, that I don't want him in bubble wrap. I want to make sure that he is able to stay healthy through a full NFL game. The same thing with Connor O'Toole. He has struggled with injuries throughout his college career. That's one of the reasons why he wound up not being drafted at all. But at the same time, for a former wide receiver, he is bulky. He's 6'4". He's 255 pounds. He is physical, and he does have flexibility. And so that's the thing, is that this is a guy that when he gets off the edge, he can actually close, whereas a lot of guys are pretty stiff if they're in undrafted free agent kind of realm. So I am intrigued by him. I like the fact that this feels like a little bit of a somewhat of an easier matchup, because the Raiders have an awful lot of young players along their offensive line as well. Hopefully the Seattle crowd at Lumen Field is able to generate some noise and create that much more of an opportunity for Connor O'Toole to have a splashy Seahawks debut.
And I'm going to go with the lowest hanging fruit for my last defender to watch. And look, I've got my nickname for Nick Emanwari now, and our Star Wars fans are probably going to love this. To me, he's General Grievous. Like, I feel like he is almost all cyborg. Like, seeing what he can do at his size. Now we get to see the cyborg go against another team. And this is probably a guy that Pete Carroll had a lot of interest in the pre-draft process as well, with his size, his athleticism, his ball skills. This is the first chance we get to see number 3. And he's kind of like Torrey Horton for me, where I feel like we're gonna see him for a few series. I don't know if you see him beyond that point, because Mike Macdonald knows this guy is going to be playing snaps for them in week 1. You don't need to have him out there playing deep into the first half or into the second half even. Yes, you want to give him some reps, but I think that there will be a line there, maybe midway through the first half. Maybe he plays a quarter where they take him out. But you're not going to get your answers how he's going to play with Julian Love and Kobe Bryant, because those guys probably are not playing in this game. But you can at least get to see what he brings to the table as a playmaker and see a little bit of blitzing. Maybe he gets his hand on a ball or two. But I'm really excited to see number 3 just get to play on Lumen Field turf against somebody else in a preseason game.
Yeah, no question about it. As I talked about before, Jalen Monroe, to me, at the quarterback position, is the guy I'm most intrigued to watch from a Seahawks perspective. Even though he was the 3rd player I mentioned, Nick Emanwari would be number 2 on that list. I'm going to mention a player that, again, I think that is very much assured of playing for the Seahawks and having a solid roster spot, but how much is he going to play and how reliable is he? And that being the cornerback Nehemiah Pritchett. Again, we don't know who Pete Carroll is going to be starting here. Obviously Geno Smith, that's a whole other storyline that to me is fascinating, his return to Lumen Field. The Raiders, however, don't have quite the talent at the wide receiver position, at least not surefire guys that the Seahawks had when Geno Smith was here with DK Metcalf, with Tyler Lockett, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, they were led last year. Of course, Devontae Adams is now a member of the Los Angeles Rams. They were led last year by Jacoby Myers, who had 4 total touchdowns at the wide receiver position, at least. And so this is not a Raiders squad at the receiver position that I think should frighten Seahawks fans. And so I wonder if Nehemiah Pritchett is able to have a splashy performance. The Raiders have 3 very young rookie wide receivers that I really like. Dante Thornton is a big-time talent. Took in the 4th round. He's 6'5". He runs in the 4.3s. He is going to be a challenge. One of my absolute favorite receivers this draft class, Jack Besh, was their 2nd-round selection. Then Tommy Malott, a former quarterback at Montana, is actually going to be their, is going to be playing at the receiver position. So similar to what John Reese Plumlee is doing for the Seahawks. So again, I think that the variety of different types of wide receivers, the fact that the Raiders have a quarterback in Aiden O'Connell, a former starter who doesn't have a big arm, but Cam Miller is a quarterback that they drafted this year who does have some creativity to his game. I think it's going to be an interesting challenge for Seattle's defensive backs. Nehemiah Pritchett, to me, is a guy that is fighting a little bit with Josh Jobe to possibly be, if not the number 3 guy, then certainly the number 4 guy for the Seahawks. This, to me, is his opportunity to demonstrate that he is able to take a big jump in year 2 in Seattle.
Now that we've had a chance to dive into the individual players, it's time to shift our focus to the keys to victory. But in this case, in a preseason game, it's more about what constitutes a successful exhibition opener, not necessarily the win or the loss at the end of the game. We're going to be diving into what's important, what is going to make a successful evening for the Seattle Seahawks on Thursday night. We'll have that coming up next year on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights like me, golf in the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to get every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get into the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet, especially during the dog days of baseball season as teams vie for playoff positioning. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. If you think that the Blue Jays are going to score 20 runs, what they did today against the Rockies, I can bet on it without a hitch. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Welcome back to the Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Let's shift our focus now, Rob. We've got this preseason opener coming up, Seahawks Raiders, Lumen Field. Away from the players individually, we've talked about who to watch on offense and defense going into this game. Let's shift the focus now to what constitutes a successful preseason opener for the Seattle Seahawks. We know Seattle's not going to be playing most of its starters. And look, when Mike Macdonald says that, I take him for it, because last year, that's exactly what happened. He's just a very by-the-book guy in press conferences. A little different, and maybe he'll develop more of that coach speak talent, but it's not like Pete Carroll, where Pete Carroll can say, everybody's live or everybody's rolling, and then everybody's like, no, does that mean the starters are playing? No, nothing he said suggested they were or were not playing, because that is what Pete Carroll is a master at. He is the master at saying nothing and make it sound like he's saying something. So we don't know if the Raiders are going to be playing starters at all. We certainly don't expect the Seahawks, other than rookies or maybe somebody like an Anthony Bradford that's still trying to win a starting job. You're not going to be seeing guys like that out there. So from that perspective, we could sit here and talk about keys to victory, but at the end of the day, winning the game is a nice cherry on top when you're talking about the preseason, Rob. That is not really what coaches are evaluating. And of course, you want to win the game, that makes it better, but it has to do with a number of other things that you're looking for this time of year as you're trying to build your roster and get ready for the games that actually do count in the standings.
No question about it. And so there are two areas here that I want to kind of focus in on that I think would constitute a victory in a lot of ways for the Seahawks. Number one, you have to win the line of scrimmage. That obviously has been an area of concern, again, specifically with Seattle's offensive line. As I talked about before, this is not a team that is likely to be playing Max Crosby, not a team that is obviously not going to be able to play Christian Wilkins, the two most talented defensive linemen that they had a year ago. Maybe they're going to be playing Tyree Wilson, their early first-round pick, who has 8 sacks over his first couple of seasons, but still has only started 4 of 33 games in his first 2 seasons in the NFL. But still, that is basically the peak of the mountaintop when it comes to the Raiders' talent. So I do think that it is critical that Seattle shows some physicality, some nastiness, some commitment to the running game. And then, of course, I think that Seattle's defensive line is going to be able to be pretty effective against a young Raiders offensive line. So I think that's important. I think another key thing here is there a pass catcher that steps up with this opportunity? Maybe it's the rookie pass catchers, like a Torrey Horton or an Elijah Arroyo, but somebody has to step up and make some plays because, as you mentioned, Corbin, we're not expecting to see Jackson Smith and Jigba or Cooper Kupp. If they do play, then one series, then, have them go off the field, of course. So those are the two things. But I am going to push back on this idea as far as, that a victory is not important. I think if you were playing any of the other 30 teams that are out there other than the Seahawks and the Raiders, then maybe it's not big. But this is a game in which you have an opportunity to go against the coach that you replaced, with a quarterback that you replaced, with a Raider Nation crowd that's going to come into Lumen Field. If the Raiders are terrible, Raider Nation fans still come strong. And so I think that is important to retake Lumen Field. And I hate to kind of quote Herman Edwards, but you play to win the game. And damn it, this is a game that I think that you have to kind of reestablish that this is your home field. And so I do think that this is a game that you want to win. You want to win even more than most preseason games. And so I fully expect the Seahawks to win this game. And I think that they're going to do it in fairly convincing fashion.
Look, the win is always nice, and I get the Pete Carroll. To me, Pete Carroll this game's going to mean more to him than it's going to mean to Mike Macdonald in the win-loss column, just because that's who Pete Carroll is. 2010, his first year, that first preseason game was like a Super Bowl for him. He was fired up to win, and then they didn't win another preseason game the rest of the year, and it wasn't a huge deal. But so I have a feeling coming back to Lumen, there is going to be some extra motivation for him to go out and win. And maybe that means we'll see Geno Smith for a drive or two, because you want to give Geno a chance to play in front of his former home crowd and get a shot to do that. But at the end of the day, if Seattle loses this game, but they execute and they don't have a bunch of sloppy play, that's going to be the big thing for me. I want to see the offense execute. And some of that is the physicality aspect, getting pushed off the line of scrimmage. That's a big thing for me. I want to see something that we haven't seen much of in practice. And part of it's because the Seahawks offensive line's going against Jaron Reed and Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy and company. And those guys are hard to move off the line of scrimmage. But I want to see this offensive line create some push. I want to see some movement off the line of scrimmage. I want to see some horizontal movement, displacement in the zone blocking game. So that's part of the execution. I want to see the quarterbacks going through their reads. I want to see them be able to get off that first read and get to their second receiver, get the ball out in a timely fashion, be mechanically sound when you're talking about Jalen Milroe. You don't want to see a bunch of false starts and stuff. It's a preseason game. You're going to see some of that stuff no matter what. But I want to see if the sharp offense we've seen in the practice field, where this seems like they're way ahead of where they were last year with that previous scheme, I want to see that show up in a game setting where even if it's the third stringers and you've got a fifth string running back in, you want to see that the offense truly is being honed in the way that it seems like on the practice field that it is. And on defense, a successful day to me, find a way to generate a turnover or two. That is a successful day for me. Find a way to get a quick change, get the ball back. That's the execution standpoint again. But Mike Macdonald wants those turnovers. Some of these young guys step up. And you want to see a few of these competitions start to take shape. Who's going to emerge in the interior defensive line from the backups? Who's going to emerge off-ball linebackers with Drake Thomas and company? Who's going to emerge in the secondary at those corner and safety spots? Does somebody like Tyakata stake a claim to a roster spot? So, again, it's more about the depth and the roster positions on defense. On offense, it seems like there's more pressing things in terms of guys that are going to play that could play significant snaps right away on offense. But the execution and playing clean football, at least by preseason standards, those are things that I'm going to be watching closely. If they can do those things, if they are successful being executing, they're successful with not getting a lot of turnovers or having penalty issues, and they lose by a few points, whoop-de-doo, Basil. I'm going to look at the film. There's been preseason games I've seen Seattle win that I was like, God, they look terrible. That's just the way that the preseason goes. I want to see the execution and things that might not match what the final score is when you have third, fourth, fifth stringers playing a good chunk of the game.
No, I think that's all very fair. But if they check the boxes that you just talked about, then I think the Seahawks wins by double digits. And so, again, that's my expectation. I think that Seattle's second and third stringers are, frankly, better than Las Vegas's. They feel like they're a young team that I think that their most dynamic players on offense, Geno Smith, Ashton Jeanty, Brock Bowers, are not likely to be on the field. And so Seattle's greater depth, greater speed should win out.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Hey, we've got the preseason game coming up tomorrow. As always, there will be a post-game Locked On Seahawks. I'll dish out some game balls. I'll have some takeaways, 3 up, 3 down. That'll be coming your way courtesy of Locked On Seahawks from the VMAX. So make sure that you listen in and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Go Hawks.